Good afternoon, Crimson Tide Nation, and welcome to another edition of Crimson Tide Live, right here at Alabama at the Voice of College Football from yours truly, Jackson Johnson, and my good buddy, partner in crime, Johnny Burts, as we bring you the latest news and notes on the Alabama Crimson Tide, including our takes on what happened in Alabama, South Florida this Saturday. Plus, you can also find Alabama at the Voice of College Football from wherever you can find your podcast, from Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and Audible. And let me tell you something, folks, it's going to be a wild ride. How you doing today, good buddy?
Doing well. Been doing a lot of work outside, but I got everything done, and I'm happy camper.
Oh, man, it's always
Ready to
good
talk
getting
some football. Get ready for this weekend. Last weekend wore me out.
Oh, well, I got to say, that South Florida game, that was the final score. It's not what it looks like. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that game was a cluster. I mean, from the very start. My focus today is just going to be on refereeing. It's awful.
We were not doing so hot. I mean, that whole thing where we fumbled to start off the third quarter, that was bad. That was horrible.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's just there never seemed to be any rhythm in the game, and I was kind of put off a little bit by the refereeing. I thought it was very inconsistent, and not only for the Alabama-South Florida game. I'm going to give you some examples of the Auburn-Cal game, where it's just some of these calls are just nonsensical. I'll give you, for instance, on South Florida's opening drive. Okay, they quarterback slips out of the pocket. He's running up the sideline, and basically, as he's headed toward the sideline, Alabama defensive back shoves him, pushes him out of bounds, and then boom, next thing you know, flag thrown. Okay, and I guess unnecessary roughness, late hit, whatever. And so that would have been fourth down, and no, keeps the drive alive, and then boom, there you go. Just keep on going down the field, and it's just, and you go back and I went back and looked at it on replay over and over and over, and I'm like, the guy was not out of bounds. He was running out of bounds, but you know how that goes. I mean, you got to make sure he goes out of bounds. You can't let him, just step away from you and keep going. So he did exactly what he was supposed to do. Late hit, boom, drive stays alive.
Well, one thing that really helped the Alabama Crimson Tide was the third down conversions, or lack thereof, from South Florida. Because, as a matter of fact, they were 2 of 18. It's like if they were better on third down Saturday night, they would have had an easier shot at trying to get to us.
Yeah, Alabama's defense, they lined up typically. They were a 3-4 man, couple of tackles, a couple of defensive ends. Sometimes they would go 3-man front right there. And then the linebackers, all they were doing was keying on, the quarterback. And so we weren't getting enough pressure. There was hardly any stunts at all during the course of the game. So it was kind of, we knew not a great passer, a good runner. He had over 100 yards rushing. So it seemed like Alabama just was going to settle back, spy the, quarterback with the linebackers. And originally, that first opening drive, they're doing the Tennessee hustle and just speed it up. But once Alabama was able, they had their success on first and second down. But when Alabama was able to get them into the third down, especially the third and long and things to that nature, had a lot more success. But, the little at the start of the game, the runs and stuff like that, and not getting any pressure when he was back there, and then letting him, kind of run around a little bit, made it a little tough. But yeah, it in the end, it worked out well, but it was still tight, and all the penalties, all the dumb turnovers. I mean, just you get, bottom line, let's get them out early. Get them out of the way.
Yeah. I mean,
all the nerves you're talking. I'm sorry, you were talking about that kickoff second half. I mean, what do you think? Great return, and then I don't know, fumble it at the end. It's rhythm. Couldn't get a rhythm.
It was pitiful.
And then it just every time you turned around, there was a penalty, not only for us, but also with regard to them. But some of the penalties were just, just nonsensical. And some I would question. I know Fromby over there on the right tackle that was subbing in. I know he got a couple of calls there, but I went back and ran that, and I mean, my gosh, they always say you can call a holding every down in the offensive line and that kind of stuff. But I mean, some of those were just kind of could have gone either way. But anyway, they called, and put him in a tough on him. He took the brunt of it because, called back a nice run by Milrow, that kind of stuff. But even that call, if you go back and look at it, it was kind of questionable. If they hadn't called it, nobody would have complained.
Well, and who was the player of the game in your eyes for week 2?
I still like, Justice Haynes and Bam. I mean, those two cats, I mean, those runs that they made, I just like, they're like little pinballs going through there. And I'm going to put it on at the very end, I mean, they those two guys, I mean, they sealed the deal. I really, really thought they did well. I'd just give it to both of them. I thought that was made everybody happy. And those were good runs too, by the way. I'm not going to take anything away. Those were absolutely good runs and a lot of contact, very physical, good cuts, and pretty good. They got a dynamic duel right there, and I don't know why they didn't put them in the ballgame at the same time. To be honest with you, I think they will eventually, but they do a good job.
Well, and our buddy Five Adams says Tim Keenan was the player of the game. What do you think about that?
I was thinking, if you go on defense, yeah. And I felt bad for number 15, Jefferson. He stoned. You remember that? It was like 9 so minutes left to go in the fourth quarter, and the quarterback scrambles once again. And that was the way we taught it, or the way I was taught when I played. And then when I coached, that guy formed that quarterback up, and that was a great hit. And I sit there and I was scratching. I said, "Are you kidding me?" And they called that targeting. And now we're going to lose him first half of the Wisconsin game. But he formed up, and that was a great tackle. Great tackle. I don't know what these guys what rules they're looking at when they're watching online over the internet or some booth there in Birmingham. But my goodness, that was a great tackle. He just formed that guy up. So defensively, I agree. Tim did a really, really good job. Big man up front, no doubt.
No doubt about it. I'd
love to see a lot more pressure on the outside. Dallas Turner, those kind of guys. I'd love seeing some more pressure outside and then funnel them up front to, our down linemen. But we were just kind of a lot of times just, they were staying in front of us and keeping us away. There were times we got there, but I would have loved to see more pressure from the outside and possible stunts. But they were just going to sit back and make that quarterback beat them, and it worked for a while. Yeah.
Well, and you mentioned that we'll have to put more pressure. That's something that we're definitely going to have to improve on going into week 3. So
definitely, we're not getting enough off the edge.
Well, and I know like Kalen DeBoer in like some of the interviews, he was like, we got to make sure our offensive line's doing all right, because like that he stressed that importance, make sure the offensive line's protecting your quarterback.
Yeah. So I think the offensive line, looking at overall with regard to the game, I think they were stunting. They were blowing and going. They were bringing both backers. They were coming from the outside, and I don't think Alabama, really for what they were doing, I don't think they did a good job on the outside throwing some little screens, then throwing behind. They didn't. Dupree, the tight end, did he even catch a pass? Just bubble him right there behind those linebackers that are blowing, the A gaps and just run him right behind. They were soft in the secondary and just really, really coming after us up front. And I would love to have seen some intermediate routes, over the middle and things like that. I mean, if they're going to come up the middle, then that middle zone, those little hot routes that we used to call them, run through the A gaps and stuff like that. And all you're doing is just replacing the linebacker. He's coming on a stunt. Your running back or your little receiver is going to slant down in there and just replace him. Or especially the tight end. I never saw a route to the tight end through the middle of the field. I would check them and slow them down, but I never did see any of that.
That's true. I mean, we're going to have to improve quite a lot going into week 3. But in the meantime, you can shop on Amazon using this link to support the Voice of College Football. You don't need to buy the product display. Doesn't cost you a penny. You get that same shopping experience. And you can also, you're not only helping the Voice of College Football, but you're helping yourself. Because, I mean, you're getting something nice from Amazon. You know you're shopping there. So you don't have to buy the product displayed. All you got to do is copy and paste that link, and boom, you got a win right there. And finally, here's the reason why you're here. He is a friend of the Voice of College Football. He has been featured on numerous episodes of the Voice of College Football from time to time, giving out previews for the Wisconsin Badgers, and he is the go-to host on Locked On Badgers, the one and only himself, Ryan Herrings. Hi.
Yeah,
how you doing today?
That's far too kind. I am not the reason anybody is here, but thank you so much for having me on, man. Humbled to be here.
Greetings from down south.
Yeah, it's always good, man, to talk football. Always great. And Badger fans have had this one circled for a long, long time. So getting Bama into Camp Randall, that's a unique experience for any college football fan. So we're excited for it for sure.
Yeah, it's going to be fun seeing the Alabama-Wisconsin home and home series. I'm really hoping the SEC doesn't take off the 2025 game, because if they do, I'm going to have a hissy fit.
No, we'll be okay if that one goes away. Let's just do this one this year.
True. I mean, I'm excited about being on Big Noon Kickoff. That's going to be fun. I mean, I know some of the people that still have DirecTV in 2024, they're going to be like, thank God it's not on ESPN or ABC.
I'll say this. The Big Noon Kickoff will be fun. It'll be a spotlight. But anytime, I've made the analogy before, if you have a house and you're hosting someone that's really important, listen, Alabama is super important in the ecology of college football. You want to put your best foot forward. And in that sense, it's a shame it's not a night game. Like Camp Randall at night, much like a lot of places at night, it just hits different. So Badger fans, we were a little disappointed we couldn't get y'all under the lights. But again, beggars can't be choosers. This is an incredible opportunity for Wisconsin.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun seeing Gus Johnson call an Alabama game, because it was pretty fun seeing it in 2022 and get to see it again. But I can't help but feel like Wisconsin saved a little bit of the energy for Alabama, because, I mean, I'll be real, everybody's going to bring their A game for Alabama. And y'all have USC after your bye week. So, I mean, you got a little bit of the big game saved. And there's some people that are like, oh, well, y'all are sloppy. You're going to look awful against Alabama. Yeah, I'm not so sure about that, because I've seen some of that way too many times. I mean, y'all came back against Western Michigan, and you had a good victory against South Dakota. What's been your synopsis for the 2024 season thus far?
Inconsistent. I don't know if very few teams, I think, ever live up to the spring and fall hype of fan bases. Like every fan base comes into every year thinking every player's in the best shape of their lives. Every scheme is going to work. Every transfer we brought in. Like I don't think we've quite hit on all cylinders, but Wisconsin's 2-0. And I think one of the things we've looked around, when you look around college football, and you saw some of that last week with Bama and South Florida, there's a lot of early season struggles we saw with Notre Dame losing. We saw it with Oregon for 2 weeks. We saw Florida State. We saw Bama. And I think maybe at times Wisconsin fans have taken a little too much out of winning 2 games comfortably. They've won by 14 each one. They could have won by 21 last week. Not great competition, but I think there's always the first couple of weeks a bit of working new pieces in. There's no preseason in college football. So I think it's been a little inconsistent. But I think a lot of Badger fans also think there's an element of playing down to your competition a little bit and then playing up to your level of competition this weekend for Bama. So I think we expect, or at least I do, I'll speak for myself, I expect a better, sharper version of the Badgers this week hosting Alabama, because I think it just has to be.
Ryan, let me ask you, how was the transfer portal for y'all? I got a lot of new players, because sometimes that continuity, I mean, when you're constantly every year or new players, and It's a different dynamic. But how are y'all on transfers?
Yeah, you hit on it. Every year it kind of changes the culture of the team. They reloaded the linebacker room dramatically from last year. They thought they needed a lot more speed there. They went into SEC country, pulled Jaheim Thomas from Arkansas. So they have reloaded athletically there. It's been a little hit or miss. And I think some of that is, again, it takes a little while to fit all these new pieces into your team, right? I think that's what sometimes fans forget is there's culture, there's scheme, and it takes a little while to gel. For the second year in a row, they've gone into the transfer portal for a quarterback. Last year was Tanner Mordecai, SMU. This year it's Tyler Van Dyke, Miami. Very interesting with Tyler Van Dyke. You know, the rap on him coming from Miami is big armed quarterback. He's going to really throw the ball down the field. You're going to get some big shock plays, but you're also going to get some really bad interceptions. So far, we've had like the inverse of that. It's been a lot of shorter passes, but he hasn't thrown picks. We're still trying to figure out like, where is this big armed guy that's going to throw deep touchdowns, but also some picks? That hasn't happened. I would say portal's been inconsistent. The Badgers did, it looks like, hit on a defensive lineman. He's got 2 sacks this year, Elijah Hills. They pulled him out of the FCS level. He's really been the most disruptive guy in the front 7. Anytime you can hit on a defensive lineman in the portal, I mean, that's like finding the gold at the end of the rainbow. So it's been a little hit or miss, but I think they did upgrade the talent and the depth on the defensive side. And then Tyler Van Dyke is the quarterback they got from the portal. And that one's still a little up in the air.
You know, and people don't realize when these guys are transferring in, some of them transfer in May, but transferring in, you know, January. And now all of a sudden you have to learn a totally new offense. You got to learn the calls, and then you got to develop a rhythm with your receivers. When you've had them there 2 or 3 years, you kind of know where to throw the ball. You kind of know what location, what their hands, things like that. But now, I mean, it's a struggle. And I think fans, and you see it with a lot of fans, even now all around the country with Dabo and stuff like that, really not very patient. They feel like it's supposed to, you know, just seamlessly happen. And yeah, I mean, that's why you need to schedule like we did South Florida. I mean, some of these opening up, you know, first game, and then you have all these transfers. I mean, I think that'll start to change a little bit. You know, these big, I know everybody used to want them and stuff like that, but I mean, that's when you had your players for 3 or 4 years. But then now it's hit or miss at first game. Yeah.
And Luke Fickle talked about that too, about the portal's great, right? Use it to augment. You have to build through recruiting. You have to build through high school kids because you put, to your point, exactly, you put them in your culture and then you know exactly what they are as you develop them. So yeah, I think the portal, there's a lot of false hope in the portal. Not that you can't find great players, obviously, because we've seen it, but you have to build through high school ranks and you have to build through culture. And that comes from recruiting and developing.
Yeah. And we saw with South Florida, I mean, they had 15 or on each side of the ball, they had 15 graduate transfers, senior, you know, redshirt seniors. The youngest player on the team was the quarterback. He's a sophomore. He was 6'3", 225. I mean, he was a beast to tackle. But it's hit or miss. But I mean, you know, a lot of these schools being so impatient think it's just going all of a sudden just a seamless flow. It's in some places it's a nightmare. You know, so you get what you get what the NCAA sets it up as. This is the new dynamic.
Yeah, but that's the thing, though, is like I've noticed that some people have gotten real impatient with Luke Fickle. They're like, "Oh, it's not going to work out." It's like I think they're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. Honestly, it's his 2nd year, not his 5th year. I mean, these things take time.
Yeah, and he's old school. I mean, he played and grew up. You know, generation where you had your players for 3, 4 years, and then if you had a transfer, you had to sit out. Now they immediately play. And so it's a new dynamic for all of these coaches. And it's got to be frustrating. I know it's got to be frustrating for them. I mean, you do not know what you're going to get. Even summer, you don't have the pads on. You do not know. It's so unsettled. I mean, it'll settle in toward the end of the season. That's why nobody's going undefeated this year.
No. And there are some, I think there's frustrations a little bit with Badger fans, but I think most of it is not directed towards Luke Fickle. I think most people understand he took over a program that was towards the end of the Paul Chryst tenure. And I'll never say a bad thing about Paul Chryst. He won a ton of games for the Badgers, but it was starting to there were more cracks in the foundation than people realized. I think is maybe the best way to say it. And Luke Fickle coming in, he's had to rebuild not just the second-story bedroom and add a toilet and a shower. He's had to rebuild some of that foundation, like the defensive line, and I'm sure we're going to get into it a little bit for Wisconsin. It's kind of barren, and that when you look back at the really good Wisconsin teams throughout the 2010 to 2020s, there was never an Ohio State defensive line. It was never an Alabama defensive line, but there were NFL guys on those defensive lines. Keanu Benton for the Steelers. Henningsen was a guy. Loudermilk plays for the Steelers, and they just don't have that, and that doesn't just change overnight. You know, like if you don't have a good defensive line, there's not really a way to scheme around that. And so it's some of that rebuilding foundation for Luke Fickell. I think most Badger fans still believe in the resume there. You're talking about a guy who brought Cincinnati to the playoffs, a guy who grew up in the Midwest, played at Ohio State, like understands winning culture, was a championship level high school wrestler, right? Like I say that because those dudes are just kind of tough. They have the right type of mentality to coach football. So I think it's taking a little more time than Badger fans thought, but I think Badger fans probably had their expectations a little too high out of the gates. And Johnny, that speaks to a little bit of what you were saying earlier with expectations of fans and myself too. Like, I'm a fan as well, so I fall into that boat.
So everybody, you said not too many happy about the 11 o'clock kickoff.
No, man, Badger. First, it's a long time, like standing thing with Badger fans. Like we don't always fill up the stadium quite as quickly as we would hope, and partially because those 11 a.m. kickoffs, man, Badger fans, they like to tailgate, they like to pregate, they like to enjoy the morning. And then there's some issues getting into Camp Randall that I'm not going to belabor on this show. Badger fans will know that, but a night game at Camp Randall, and listen, much like a night game in Tuscaloosa or a nice night game in Death Valley, like those just hit a certain way. And again, when you have a national spotlight, which you do when Bama comes into town, right? You have a national spotlight for a game like this. It's much like, as I mentioned, showing your house. You want to show off the best aspect of it, and the best aspect of Madison is a night game. But listen,
you ever have a whiteout?
No, we don't do whiteouts, but we'll stripe it. Sometimes we'll do red and white. So we will stripe it sometimes. But it is just unbelievable at night, especially if it's a good atmosphere. Jump around third quarter, the fans are singing. There's some vulgarities in the student section that, again, on a family show we won't speak to, but it's next level at night.
Well, and friend,
who the commentators are? Who are the commentators for this game? Does anybody know? I forgot to look.
Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt for Alabama, Wisconsin.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm just waiting to hear, oh, touchdown.
Gus will bring it.
Oh yeah. Like that's why I love watching like a game on Fox for sure. Matthew Anderson, thank you for tuning in to today's edition of Crimson Tide Live at Alabama at the Voice of College Football. He says Camp Randall is awesome at night. Should have been a night game. He agrees with that sentiment that it should have been a night game.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Me personally, I don't care what time it is. Like, you just tell me the time and I'll make sure to watch it.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of those 11 a.m. kickoffs. Not a big fan. Even when I played, I wasn't a big fan of some of that. I always liked the traditional, the night games.
Yeah.
You always hated the 2:30 in the South. You did not want that 2:30 kickoff. I mean, muggy, miserable. And then the worst was if you had a pop-up shower right before the game, and you go in the locker room and you come out, and then the steam's coming off the grass. Y'all still grass up there?
Yeah. Well, they redid the stadium actually, so it's not grass. So they redid the stadium, so they're able to put heating elements underneath it. In anticipation of, obviously now there's 12-team playoff, you're able to host a playoff game. Well, y'all don't have this issue. You have pop-up showers, but you don't have to worry about having a heating element under your stadium in case it's a playoff game. So they are trying to get ahead of the game there. And so the field it's still getting broken in. It's a brand new one. They just redid it this offseason.
Yeah. So it's a synthetic.
Mm-hmm.
It's got the little pellets and all that kind of crazy stuff. Oh, gosh, let me tell you this. We played at Southern Illinois one time, and they had the old AstroTurf. And you know what they softened the turf with? Sand.
No.
Sand. And then when you talking about scraping and friction on those elbows, it was awful.
It's going to be painful.
Oh, yeah. Patted it with sand. Ugh, that would eat you alive.
Oof. Well, I'm glad you gentlemen are talking about like preparing for disasters, because I can tell you right now, you might want to go to the sponsor to aura.com/MarkRogers to get a 14-day trial to secure your finances, information, identity, get peace of mind. And I'm going to tell you right now, it's going to be the best of the best when you get it. That I can guarantee. There's a reason why it says peace of mind, because it will give you peace and tranquility. And now I'd like to discuss a little bit about the series history. Now, we've only played each other twice, once in 2015 at the Jerry Dome, and in 1928 on November 15th in the Wallace Wade era, where Wisconsin won 15-0. And like the late end of the 20s, while it wasn't a great depression for everybody, a lot of us in Tuscaloosa kind of considered that a great depression for us, because it's like we weren't like in the Rose Bowl for those 3 years at that time. But it's great to see Alabama, Wisconsin having that home and home. And what
2015? Didn't we go to Wisconsin?
No, we went to the Jerry Dome. We didn't have a home.
That's right. Was that one of those early season?
Yes, it was week 1 on ABC. Chris Fowler, Kirk Herbstreit were calling that game.
Yeah.
We were excited about that one too, and then the game started. Funny thing, that was actually Wisconsin, if I remember correctly, played pretty close. And there's a term, if crock potting. I don't know if you ever watched the Solid Verbal College Football podcast, but they have a term for basically I think invented it for Alabama essentially, where Bama would just crock pot teams, where you just kind of slowly cook them to death. And it felt like that was a crock pot game for Wisconsin. They hung around, but it felt like they certainly shouldn't be. And at the end of it, I think Bama won by 21 or something. Just too physical, too good.
Well, we won 35. We won 35-17 to start things off for the Paul Chryst era for Wisconsin. It was funny though, where it was like Gary Anderson left for Oregon State. Like it was like, I know there was like a running joke about Wisconsin being cheap and all that, but that's changed quite a lot since.
Yeah, Wisconsin is. It's tough because you guys are blue. Like I said, you guys, but Bama is a blue blood, and Wisconsin is always just in that tier right below, right wherever those tier lines mark up. But I always tell Badger fans, because Badger fans, it's so easy as a fan, and this is true in life too. You always kind of look at your neighbor that has a little bit more or whatever, keeping up with the Joneses. And Badger fans are always looking up at, to some degree, Ohio State, Michigan, Penn State, the Bamas, the Notre Dames. Wisconsin is much more of a have than have not in college football. Like the ability to go hire a Luke Fickell, like that's a coach that could have gone to a lot of places. Wisconsin's NIL program has been pretty good. They're reinvesting right now in a really nice practice stadium facility upgrade. They just redid the field. Wisconsin can compete just about everywhere outside of that very top tier. So I always tell Badger fans, we're much more of a have than a have not. Don't stress it too much. That being said, you're never going to be a Bama. You're never going to have the support of a Georgia or an Ohio State or Notre Dame. But if you can land the right quarterback, you can still jump up and bite any of those teams. And I think that's what it all comes down to. Can you find that right quarterback? Because they've actually done a pretty good job of reinvesting in the other areas of the program. Yeah.
I've always known, Wisconsin as being, big up front with the offensive line. Then you had Ron Dane and very, very, very physical, type players and stuff like that. And a lot of offensive linemen going into the NFL and having great success. And so I figure they'll line up and they'll try to, establish a little, something up front, little strategy up front, get real physical, make it a real physical, tight game.
Mm-hmm. And they still in this game have that veteran offensive line, pretty big offensive line. They have shifted a little bit. Phil Longo came in with Fickell, and it plays more of an air raid, more of a power spread, somewhere in between the two of those. So we spread it out a little bit more. But Longo still wants to run the ball a lot. We ran the ball a lot in the first 2 weeks. So that part of Wisconsin offense, regardless of what formation we run it out of, is never, in my opinion, going to go away. There's always going to be some physicality up front. There's always going to be some running backs. You're still going to see that. How successful it'll be, that's definitely something we can talk about and get into, because that's going to be a big key to the game on both sides of the ball.
Yeah.
Well, and I've always heard about Wisconsin being running back you. There's two schools I always think of in college football that are running back you: Georgia and Wisconsin. Is Wisconsin still running back you, especially in 2024? And who is that running back that we need to look out for?
Running back you. I mean, you'd be hard pressed to argue with the lineage of Wisconsin as running back you since early 90s, right? You look at the guys they've churned out, multiple Doak Walker winners. And quite frankly, some of the guys at Wisconsin, if they had gone to Bama, would have won a Heisman. I have no doubt about that, just because certain schools get a little more prestige. No doubt about it. Are they running back you now? I don't know. Like, they haven't had an elite guy in a while. It's a really deep running back room. This is one of the deeper running back rooms Wisconsin has had in a while, but it's not an elite room. There's not a star there. You're going to see Ches Malusi get quite a few carries. Malusi was a Clemson transfer. He's had several injuries. Solid starter, but he hasn't run very efficiently this year. He's at 3.83 yards per carry. It's been a little bit of a struggle for him. The guys behind him have actually been a little more productive. So you're going to see a running back rotation. It's going to be Tyree Walker if he's healthy. Johnny, speak to your earlier point. That's a guy that got out of the portal, big physical running back. And then underneath him, Cade Yakimelli has really been, and Matthew Anderson nails it here, Yak. He's really been a revelation to some degree for Wisconsin through the first two games. He's looked the best. He's looked more explosive, kind of a bigger back, slashing runner, good speed, not a ton of agility in space, he's not going to make a lot of people miss, but when he sees a hole, he hits it really quickly north and south. So you're going to see Cade Yakimelli. And then they have two freshmen, both four-star guys. Wisconsin's really high on both of them. They both played last weekend. I don't know how much you're going to realistically see them in week 3. The future is bright for them. You're probably going to see mostly a Tyree, Ches Walker, and then Cade Yakimelli trio.
Now, is the spread still around 12, 14?
I think I saw 16, unless...
Yeah, it's at 16, but
the over-under is 50.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Alabama is favored by 16, but before we get into that, here's our friend Mark Rogers discussing how you can get some of the best picks in all of college football.
College football is even more exciting with some action on the line, and the games are even better when you're cashing in. And the Voice of College Football is the place to be to get the greatest value. Let's start with my picks. 75% against the money line, 58% against the spread. I've got a 40-year track record. In fact, in 2023, at $100 played per game, you would have netted over $9,300. And guess what? I'm just the warm-up act. Steve Merrill, our ace in the hole, show stopper from Wager Talk. 6 years with the Voice of College Football, over 30 years in the industry. Steve gives us analysis on all the big games, but you can't miss Steve's weekly under-the-radar pick, which went 21-5 against the spread the last 2 seasons. I repeat, 21-5 against the spread. You also get picks from some of our top analysts here at the Voice of College Football, including Steve Dace and Matt Zemek. Become a YouTube channel member or Patreon member for just $99 per month. Go to the main channel on YouTube, click join, and select the betting tier. Do the same thing on Patreon. Make 2024 a winner now.
And that's not all. You can check out Steve Merrill's Under the Radar picks on Patreon, where it is now updated to 23-5. He is now 2-0 for the 2024 season. Now, Rutgers was favored by 23 points. They won 49-17. So if you had that game on your parlay, that's a winner right then and there. And if you had Pittsburgh, Kent State on your parlay, which I believe they were favored by 24, that was a winner right there as well. Because what did Pittsburgh, how much they win by? Well, let's look, shall we? Ta-da! They won 55-24. So if you had that game on your parlay, well, I'll tell you right now, you were probably nervous, I won't lie. But you were extremely happy. And I guarantee you, when you pick Steve Merrill's Under the Radar pick, and when you pick from Steve Dace at the Michigan Podcast, Matt Zemek at Trojan Conquest, and Mark Rogers, you're basically making an investment for the future. That I can personally guarantee.
Well, Ryan, I was going to tell you this. Alabama, what you're going to see with Alabama, you're going to see some speed, some physicality, but a lot of inconsistency right now. I don't know with regard to Wisconsin, but a lot of penalties, a lot of turnovers. But I mean, it's something that can be fixed, and it will be. I don't know if it'll happen this week, and they'll start piecing it and putting it all together. But they'll be they'll usually Alabama, as the season rolls along, they'll start tightening the ship and cut down the number of people that are rotations and number of players that are in and out and that kind of stuff. Running backs are going to be good. Those two guys they're like they're like ping pong balls. They'll bounce around, good low to the ground with their gravity, good feet, quick feet. Kind of a Mark Ingram. Remember old Mark? He had really good balance in his legs. You're going to see a lot of that. You got a little Ryan Williams, a little 17-year-old out there. He's got some good speed.
Hollywood.
Good speed. They got to do a better job getting him open. But right now, I need to see for them. I need to see the tight end more, and they absolutely do not use tight end. If it is, it's for blocking. But last week, I don't know if you heard, we were South Florida was just blowing linebackers through the A gaps and come. I mean, they were bringing 5, 6, 7, and then we're throwing nothing behind them. Replace the linebackers when they, we had no hot routes underneath. I don't even know if we even threw the tight end. But I mean, you got to have somebody going through the middle of that field and just occupying those linebackers. But we did none of that. So we got a little I don't know, strategize and have to really rethink that. I think we really need to start attacking the middle of the field, run some post routes through there, and just everything seems to be on the edge and just not enough underneath to for those linebackers to be occupied. They're just thinking run and that kind of stuff. And then when they sometimes we'll hit it, those two little running backs, they'll skedaddle through there and they'll pop it out of there. But just a lot of inconsistency, but a lot of talent, a lot of speed. So we'll see what happens.
I think you should wait till week 4 to start attacking the middle of the field. Give it one more week.
Oh, yeah. We need one of those like George, one of those Brock Bowers, and nobody could cover that guy.
No, he was.
He was big in the middle, great hands. He could run on the outside, and if we had somebody like that, but yeah, we need to get something through the middle of the field. Now we'll Georgia. That will be a challenge for us, but it's also going to be a challenge for them because they'll be one of those line and wait. Alabama will really bring something for Georgia, so I don't want to be interesting, but I hope we'll do a little. I don't know, start to figure out some things on offense.
Well, I was watching, just kind of getting ready for this game this week, watching some of the running backs. Miller is really impressive. Jam Miller, really impressive. North south, like you said, good balance. And that's really been, and I would kick this back to you, that's really been a big question mark for Wisconsin is the rush defense. They've struggled at times. Both Western Michigan and South Dakota, which are not Alabama, have been able at times to gash Wisconsin in the running game between the tackles. I question, will Alabama and Coach DeBoer and this offense with some of those receivers, with Milroe, will they just be patient and just run the ball if they don't need to ever throw it? Will they stick to that?
I don't know. They do very little RPOs. Usually it's a call pass, it's a call run. There's not a lot of optioning going on with regard to that. But I agree with what you're saying. They'll have to figure it out now. They'll have to figure it out real soon. What is the style? What are we going to bring? Are we going to be a power run it straight in your face? We're going to do some RPOs, we're going to do some little option, things like that. We don't trap very much. We don't do a lot of pulling, the guards and tackles and trapping and all of that. It's just either, throw it or just, run it and that kind of stuff. But need to get a little more dynamic in there. Make the defense think a little more.
Yeah. But yeah, what so far, what is your score prediction, or are you not ready to release that just yet?
I'm an open book. I mean, I might revise it, but no, I have kind of consistently said I think Alabama probably wins by at least a couple scores. The first score I threw out there was I think 38-17. The thing of it is, I have a hard time seeing Wisconsin stand up in the trenches is the problem. It's just not a typical Wisconsin defense line, and the linebackers are a little bit in flux. That being said, it's game in Camp Randall. If Wisconsin can start off kind of early, I do think they have the ability to make it a scary game for Alabama. They do have weapons. I don't think they've played up to their potential at all. But I just haven't seen them be able to hold up in the trenches against two teams that aren't nearly as physical as Alabama and aren't able to run the ball as well as Alabama. The two-headed running back machine you guys have is terrifying to me. And you can swing them out on wheel routes, which we saw in film last year with Miller. The ability to suck those guys in and then hit him on down the sideline is terrifying. And then Milroe, when he runs, like the Badgers haven't had to face a physical mobile quarterback this year, and they've had trouble defending the run, right? So if that's another aspect they have to game plan for, I think that's the biggest worry for me is just stopping Alabama from playing bully ball down the field. And I don't know if they can do it. So I have Alabama by a couple touchdowns. Certainly hoping I'm wrong, and I will run half naked down the streets of Madison if I am.
No, don't do that. You don't want to get arrested.
Listen, I'll say this. This is a great opportunity for Wisconsin, right? You don't get chances like this that often. So who knows, right? Like that's why you play the games. On paper, Bama's more talented, but plenty of on-paper teams that have been more talented have gone on the road and lost. So I'm excited for it. I do think Bama has an advantage in the trenches, though, and ultimately that's a big deal.
What do y'all picked out there in the Pac-10? What do y'all pick to finish?
Middle of the pack right now. Yeah,
Big 10.
Yeah,
Big 18 basically.
18. I mean, it's a super interesting conference where outside of a couple teams, there's a lot of flux. There's a lot of new quarterbacks. You have the 4 new West Coast teams. We have Alabama this week, obviously, but then we go to USC. So those things are going to start to shake themselves out. But most prognosticators have had Wisconsin right kind of in that middle group, right? It's that big tier of middle that nobody can quite figure out. Like, does Bama actually, or does Iowa actually have an offense this year? What does Nebraska look like? They just waxed Colorado, but we don't think Colorado's that good, probably. How is Wisconsin in year 2 a fickle? Is Northwestern on the right track after they bounced back surprisingly last year under the new coach? Greg Schiano has done great work at Rutgers. How sustainable is that? There's a big middle glob in the Big Ten, and I don't think people really know how that's going to shake out whatsoever.
Well, and I've noticed anytime Wisconsin has had to go to Northwestern, it's always been sort of a scare for the. Yep, that head shake confirmed it right there. It's always a scare.
Terrifying.
I'm sorry I had to bring that up. It's just I'm making sure I bring my.
Yeah, it's kind of like Alabama Auburn. I mean, you never know what's going to happen. Sometimes it's very rarely has anybody ever been able to pick and feel comfortable with an Alabama Auburn pick. I mean, it's just, and so I can relate to that.
I told everybody at After Dark last year, when it was the week before rivalry week, they were like, "Oh, Auburn lost to New Mexico State. Oh, they're going to get beat down by Alabama." It's like, except one thing, we're going to be going to Jordan Hare. That's a scary place right there.
Yeah, if they get in, and if they stay close, and which they were able to do, if they keep it close, it gets louder and louder and louder and crazier and crazier. And but anyway, this year it kind of worked. It kind of worked its way out.
Well, you never know in college football. Like, that's the beauty of it, right? Like, you just never know. I mean, I used to work at ESPN, and the very first game I did, I was doing the stat tracking, was the Michigan Appalachian State game. That was the very first game I did, and they stuck me on that game because they were like, "Well, nothing weird is going to happen here. Go get your feet wet."
Yeah,
like App State shocks them. Like, you never know in college football. So
the first ever Big Ten game on the Big Ten Network on September 1st, 2007.
Yep. Shocked them. Got them. And that Michigan team was like 5th in the country, 4th or 5th in the country. Got a bunch of pieces back. So you never know. And that's the beauty of hosting Bama. You get them. Listen, if you're a Badger fan, you get Bama week 3. You get them at home, right? You get them year 1 in the post-Saban era. I mean, this is the time to take the swing at Bama. And I don't think nationally it would absolutely be an upset. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not. But nationally, if Bama can't win into Camp Randall and it's a really tight game in the 4th quarter, I don't think anybody's going to be shocked. Like, that's not going to be some shocking thing. So if you're a Badger fan, that's what you're looking for. Keep it close, right?
See what happens. Yeah.
See what happens. You probably got to win the turnover.
Crazy things happen. That's for sure. That's what I would do. Keep it close.
Yeah.
Keep it close. And then hope listen, we all know this. If it's a close game in the 4th quarter, balls can bounce a weird way. You get a tip ball, a blocked field goal.
Well, let me ask you this. How fast are you at your receivers? Got a lot of speed?
Next question. What else do we got?
Okay.
Well, I will say, I was going to ask you next, Johnny. What's your score prediction for Alabama, Wisconsin?
I think there's going to be some big plays. I think Alabama's going to pop a couple, but I'm not ready to say Alabama hadn't found its groove, its identity. Still, I'm not real comfortable with the defense, what we're doing on defense. Not real comfortable with who we are on offense. And it's kind of hit and miss, and there's nobody's figured it out. I don't even think. Well, I know they haven't figured it out, so I would say I think Alabama covered the spread. I don't know about the over under 50. I think Alabama. I think speed will really help, and the big part of that speed is going to be Milroe. I think if he breaks loose a couple of times, I mean, gosh, the last few games, I mean, he's always going to pop one for could be 50, 60, 70. And I mean, that guy's, I mean, he's blazing. I mean, he is fast. So I would say Alabama's going to cover the spread, but I wouldn't go with the over under. I don't think there's going to be 50 points. I think it's going to be a lot less than that.
Well, in friend of Alabama, the Voice of College Football and the Voice of College Football, Sports Talk with Austin said Wisconsin almost lost to Western Michigan, so I'm very cautious on Wisconsin.
Playing a little rope-a-dope. That's what it is right there. Playing a little rope-a-dope.
Yeah.
Like I said, I think you look around, and we were having this discussion. We have a Locked On Badgers Discord, and we were talking about it. And we hit on this a little bit at the beginning, but I do think we're in an era of college football with so many transfers that a lot of teams have struggled early, right? And I think that just might be some of the new norm with college football. And
it is. You're right. Yeah, you might hit one early and lay an egg later, but yeah, it's hit or miss. I mean, you're going to see some of these teams that had the big upset turn around and get upset. And it's going to be, but yeah, I agree exactly what you said there.
And if you like top-notch Wisconsin takes, go to Locked On Badgers Discord, and you can get some of the insider knowledge on Wisconsin, especially when you're making picks.
I bet with my heart, though, don't listen to my picks. There's sharper guys in our Discord. I will always take Wisconsin to cover, so don't listen to me.
Homer.
Yeah.
I mean, he's a homer.
I am unabashedly.
There you go. Me too.
Oh, man. There you go. So, I mean, it's a huge win to see Alabama.
Hey, Ryan, I'm sorry to interrupt. Ryan, I was saying this. Saban's they're probably going to have, college football in Tuscaloosa next week for Georgia. I want to see what Saban. I want to see his pick.
Yes.
In Tuscaloosa at Saban Field.
That'd be awesome.
Because he keeps saying, "Well, you got to go through Georgia."
That'd be awesome. I love it.
I can't wait to see it.
I'm hoping that Bama players are looking ahead to that one.
They could be. We don't know yet.
I don't think they will be. I think they're going to be focused on Wisconsin.
Yeah, because I mean, like a lot of them are Saban guys, so it's like Saban sees him looking ahead. He's going to be mad.
Mm-hmm.
He's going to be like, "Oh, right, I'm not the coach anymore. I work at College Game Day."
He's going to say, "You better not lose your butt to Georgia at Saban Field, by gosh."
Yeah.
I hope that's what he says. And of course, I'll put that bulldog head. I think I'm going to be there and rip it off his.
That's awesome.
Oh, man. I remember in 2008 where he was yelling at the Georgia Bulldogs, said, "That dog is ugly. Give me this thing here." And he's got the outfit on. Yeah. That was a classic.
But he's been lucky this late. He picked who was it? Well, he did pick Texas. Who was it the week before he picked? No, he picked the Fighting Irish. Remember, he came out.
He dressed up as an Irishman.
Yep. So he's been hitting it.
Oh yeah, it's always fun watching him pick games for sure. I mean, it's like not too crazy about College Game Day lately, but I mean, I always want to see what Lee Corso is going to pick. Like which
it was fun watching him do the little whoosh with Auburn. How'd that go for you?
It's one of the iconic parts of college football the last 15 years is that show and that set and Corso.
Yeah.
Bless his heart. I hope he stays as long as he can. Bless his heart. He's been coached. I've never known football without him.
Yeah, same. It's been
Well, and as for me, I think I'm going to go with Alabama 28, Wisconsin 20. That's going to be my final score.
Oh, I'm gonna. How much you got? How much you got in your pocket right now? I'll take that one. How much
I
you
don't
got
have
in
much.
your pocket, big boy? I'm gonna take.
I don't have
I ain't a
much at
betting
the
guy, but I'll
moment.
take that one. 28-20. Okay.
I think it's gonna go under 51 and a half. I feel like it's gonna go under that total.
Okay.
One
Okay,
interesting
voice of Alabama football.
one interesting thing to see in this game is the Badgers are really high in their secondary. So I'm gonna be curious to see how much island they're willing to play with guys like Williams. So I think you're gonna have to commit guys to the box, but they do have probably their two best defensive players. It's a corner and a safety. The entire 5 secondary guys are redshirt freshmen. I mean, redshirt seniors or seniors. It's really a really veteran group. Rico Holman, their cornerback, had 7 picks last year. Week 1, Western Michigan didn't even target him, didn't even throw him the ball. I'm curious. I think this might be the game where they get a little risky on the edges. They say, we're going to play straight man, and we're going to put an extra guy in the box because the run game is the Badgers' weakness. So I'm curious if Bama's going to, you mentioned they didn't really throw it past, throw it deep as much last week. If they didn't really push the ball quite as much, I'm curious to see if there's some shots there and if the Badgers are willing to play more man.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens with Alabama, Wisconsin this Saturday. I mean, I know this Saturday looks like a sloppy slate for some people, but honestly, just because it's a sloppy slate does not mean upsets won't be coming. Like on Game of Thrones, where winter's coming, well, upsets are coming.
There's never
who do you follow Alabama with? Who's after Alabama? Remind me.
We have a bye and then we go to USC.
Okay. Well, that's good for you.
Yeah. So theoretically, again, like if you were to game this out, if Wisconsin is able to spring an upset, again, just go with me here for a second. Then you get a bye, and then you get a go. I mean, Wisconsin heading to USC could end up being a tremendous game if Wisconsin is able to somehow kind of spring this upset here. So there's a lot riding on this for Wisconsin as well.
Yeah. But we are going to be wrapping up Crimson Tide Live 3, and we'll be getting ready for next Monday. But in the meantime, we'll be having a wild week ahead of us. And Ryan, thank you for coming on. And for those who want to get a hold of where they can find some of the top-notch the top notes on Wisconsin athletics, where can they find you?
Yeah, find me over Locked On Badgers YouTube. I'm on Twitter at Ryan and Bucky. Always just happy to talk football, man. Thank you guys for having me on here. Humbled to be here. Really appreciate it. And looking forward to it, man.
I like
Ryan.
the
Ryan.
Wisconsin State hat. That's pretty cool.
Thank you.
Did you hear me, Ryan?
No, what's going on?
Roll Tide.
Stop it right now. Really quick. I'll end on this. For any Bama fans coming up to Madison, we do have a beer that contributes directly to our varsity collective. So go ahead and drink as much of that as you can find. It's from Potosi Brewery, Golden Ale. Drink up. It only helps Wisconsin recruiting. And we don't recruit in the same guys you do anyway. So have a lot of beer. Help us out. And then let's have a good weekend.
Yeah. Is it a lager?
It's like an ale, a light ale.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Well, it's going to be fun, and we appreciate you coming on. And it's an honor talking with you, man. It is awesome. And in the meantime, up next is Longhorns Live 20 at Texas at the Voice College Football, where Matthew Miller will be going over the recap of that humongous Texas-Michigan matchup from Big Noon Kickoff. And he's going to be giving a preview of the Texas-San Antonio Roadrunners. Let's hope there's not some coyotes going after them too much. I mean, they've had enough of them already. So it's like, hey, Roadrunner, can we borrow some of your magic? They don't have any. So, but in the meantime, y'all have an awesome rest of Monday, and stay safe, stay cool, stay away from that heat. Roll Tide.